And a very good morning to everybody. I must first probably start today by saying a happy Heritage Day to everybody who was celebrating yesterday. I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel always like this crazy existential crisis when it comes to Heritage Day about which heritage to now celebrate and how on earth to go about doing that when we've come from such a diverse sort of nation with each of us having so much in us from our histories that makes us so diverse as people. But I do hope the public holiday was at least special in our media and marketing industries and in the publisher spaces. Like any break we get is never really a holiday, and it stresses us out more about the shorter weeks. But I do hope you got some rest in yesterday. My name is Danilo. If we haven't met just yet, it's nice to meet you. I'm looking after the IAB Insight series as your MC to make sure everything runs nice and smoothly and to ensure that we're all gaining as many actionable insights that we can from some of the experts across our industry. And it's so wonderful to be with you all this morning, and I hope that everybody is having a good start to the day. I saw some comments on the chat, people coming in from Cape Town. Nice to have you all with us if you are tuning in from Cape Town. Also our Joburg communities as well too, all from there. It says that Cape Town's weather is finally getting nice and better. So I'm glad to hear that Cape Town slowly but surely moving into its spring and actual summer. Some names I see in our attendee list today, and there are almost about just over 100 of you in the call today, but I will call out a few. Bianca, Bonga, Clint, Elaine, welcome. Jade, hello. Kennedy, Lauren, Martin, nice to have you with us today. Oratile, good to have you here. Nice to have Tatenda in the room. And let's go right at the bottom, the last Z on the list, Zweletu. Nice to have you with us on this call this morning. All right, we've got a lot to get through today. As you know, for the Insight series for this whole year, we've been focusing on this theme of trust is measured, elevating transparency in the metrics that matter. That's our focus for today. But overarchingly, we're looking at trust and transparency more generally in the media and marketing industries, which has become an overarching challenge as we've created new tools and technology, as the industry is moving into this very digital era. How do we make sure that what we do and what we measure is indeed trustworthy and transparent? And the conversation today is really going to be diving deeper into exactly that. When it comes to the content that we see online, looking at platforms like Google and publishers like Media24 and some of the brands who spend time creating content for these platforms, how do we ultimately go about measuring success? How do we benchmark ourselves against what that success looks like? And some of the industry titans will be joining us on the call today. I'm very, very excited about this because we're going to be unpacking first and foremost how new frameworks like the Barcelona principles are shaping the future measurement ecosystem. If you haven't heard of the Barcelona principles, don't worry, got your back. We'll share some more of that later on. What's being measured right now, what we're kind of getting right, and what gaps still exist in the industry when it comes to trying to measure success online, and most importantly, how we can ensure clarity, accountability, and effectiveness in a privacy-first digital economy, especially when there's a lot of pressure across the sort of brand market to retain share and to prove success to those boardrooms who often find it very difficult to understand how and what to measure. So before we jump into the session today, just note that the session is going to be recorded and it will be shared with you afterwards. So if you are attending today, look forward to receiving that as part of our IAB emailers. So please do subscribe if you're not currently a subscriber of the emails that go out as part of the IAB. We'll send those on to you. You can also use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to engage our panelists today in a discussion. We'll only be taking your questions from that Q&A box and not from the chat. The chat is for us to be able to engage and just enjoy each other's company. But the Q&A will be where we take your very important questions to our panel. And then finally, we're going to be running a number of polls that will pop up on your screen. So if you're sitting back and relaxing and you're far away from your device, I suggest you lean in slightly closer because we do need access to some of your information as we're trying to build out a really cool research project as part of the IAB, and your contribution would be fantastic. So speaking of, let's do a little test for our first poll that I'd like to run. There are 3 questions in this poll, and no, there's no right answer. This is just a poll to gauge your insights. And so please do answer all 3 questions and then make sure that you click submit at the end of the poll that we're going to post on screen. And before I introduce our speakers that will be speaking to us in a second. So the first question in the poll says, how confident are you in the accuracy of your current digital marketing measurement models or models? You can see there's very confident, somewhat confident, not confident. What is your biggest challenge in digital campaign measurement today? Inconsistent metrics across platforms, lack of transparency from partners and vendors, difficulty linking media investment to business outcomes, or the lack of agreed industry standards? And then the last question is, when it comes to transparency, which area matters to you most? And there's some things about media spend. And then an ampersand is meant to be there. But anyway, it says meant to be media spend and fees, I assume. It says audience data integrity, measurement methodology, and attribution models. Forgive my public holiday voice. Here we go. I see we've got about 33 of 100 of you answered the question so far. So we're sitting about 40% of participation. I'll wait till we get to about 70, then I'll reveal the results to you in a second. While I do that, let me introduce you to some of the speakers that are coming up in our session for today. I'm looking forward to having them be introduced to you. First up on our screen, you'll be able to see our next speaker. He's going to be our keynote for the day. I'm very excited to have Oresti joining us on the call today. Oresti from Ornico, who's one of the sponsors here of the Insight series, has been running the business for almost 41 years, I think. And, we'll be coming to share some general groundwork with what's happening more generally in our industry when it comes to media and measurement. And so he'll be doing a keynote. Then joining us in a panel discussion towards the end, we've got the absolute titan in our industry who we absolutely love hearing from, always here at the Insights, Jerusha Raath. She's the publisher at News 24. She also sits on a council here at the IAB, and she's going to be coming to share some insights from their experience as a publisher in this industry and what they're doing to manage sort of measurement and transparency in their world. She'll then be joined by Hayden Goldstein from Google. He's the data and measurement lead for Sub-Saharan Africa. So yes, we will be discussing all of Google's main questions that you have in that panel discussion. And if you have any that you would like to ask in the Q&A, please do pass those on. And then joining them will be Luzuko Tena, the category media lead at Unilever. He's recently joined their team about a month ago. And so from a brand perspective, what he's viewing as what metrics should be measured for companies to be considered successful or to meet those benchmarks will be a great addition. And then we'll close off the session with Rene Fowler, who won't be in our panel, but will be coming to share some thanks with our teams today, but also to invite you to be part of a massive research project that the Research and Measurement Council at the IAB are doing. And I'd love for you guys to be part of that as well. Okay, let's end the poll here. And I can say that we've got about at least 70% participation. You can see some of the results on screen. So basically, seems like for question number 1 about how confident you are, 69% of you saying somewhat confident. So we've got a sort of middle rung there. Question 2, what's the biggest challenge that you're facing? Seems the majority, 42%, say inconsistent metrics across platforms. Very interesting. We'll discuss that today as well. And then question 3, when it comes to transparency, which area matters to you most? Seems like the majority of you are saying audience data integrity. Interesting. I'd love to hear it. So thank you so much for sharing some results. There'll be another set of polls coming up after our keynote address, and we look forward to seeing some of those insights when we get there. Sure. I need a breather. So let's hand over to our first speaker as we go. I'm so excited to welcome Oresti onto the screen today. Oresti is just an absolute a titan in our industry, but beyond that, he's also one of the most nicest human beings in our media and marketing landscape. Oresti is coming to share with us a keynote address today, and he's got quite a big task ahead of him to be able to share some of the insights around how we're going to bring trust and measure that trust, elevating transparency in the metrics that matter. And so, Oresti, you've got a big job ahead of you. How are you doing this morning?
Yeah, Danilo, great. Thank you very much. Yeah, excited to talk about this because I think it's an important subject, number one. But I also think when I saw some of those results, it's that there's no way to kind of measure and how do you align it with business values. And I think that's what I'm going to talk about right now.
Love it. So Oresti, the stage is yours. Thank you for your time today. And yeah, if you guys have any questions for Oresti that you want us to answer post the webinar, please do pop them in the Q&A and we'll get those posted across to him. So lay the foundations, Oresti. Over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so the IAB's main theme for this year is trust is measured, elevating transparency in the metrics that matter. And I think that's really an important theme that we have because trust, we're losing trust all over the place, whether it's with governments, whether it's with big brands, whether it's with media, whether it's internally between ourselves. And I think that's why it really, really matters. My task is really just to talk about the future measurement ecosystem. And again, that's a huge task. And the reason why I say that is that at the end of the day, what happens is what is measurement? And there's so many different types of measurement that we need to really be aware of. Is it measurement in ad spend? Is it measurement in audience? Is it measurement around reach and frequency, brand awareness, sentiment? From a sales perspective, it's about conversion metrics, share of voice. The ones that I'm really going to talk about is vanity metrics and the performance metrics, but I'm also going to touch a little bit about audience, specifically coming from an IAB perspective. So one of the things I wanted to chat about is that ultimately we find it really difficult to align measurement metrics with business outcomes, as I even saw with that poll. So what I've done is I've shown you an award that Specsavers won last year. I know we all remember Specsavers winning at Lurie's, but in terms of how effective their measurement was and how effective their alignment was, is what I'm going to actually show you right now. So let's just watch the video and we'll just talk about some of that stuff.
Avoid getting a hearing test for up to 10 years because it makes them feel old. But while hearing loss is isolating and scary, mishearing can actually be a lot of fun.
Now I thought I'd share some of my favorite misheard lyrics.
Philippe's not your dad.
I'm friends with the monster.
Specsavers aim to create a hearing test people wanted to listen to. That's where this guy came in. Rick's biggest hit is one the world has been mishearing for years. So we scanned the internet for the song's most misheard lyrics, rewrote the song, and got Rick to re-record it. Creating the misheard version. Then released it to the nation's ears without explanation as the world's first mass hearing test, causing chaos across socials.
Did I just hear Rick sing My Aunt's Been Naked?
I've been singing the wrong lyrics the whole time.
Wouldn't catch nits. Rick, what is happening?
Did I just get Rick rolled by Rick Astley?
Igniting a national conversation on hearing loss.
Rick Astley.
Rick Astley.
Rick Astley.
This is a really clever idea because people with hearing loss mishear.
I'm absolutely loving the resurgence of Rick Astley.
He's hoping the revamped song will encourage more people to get their ears checked.
The misheard version was played over 20 million times in the first 8 hours, driving a 138% increase in hearing loss searches, making hearing the country's #1 trending topic, leading Specsavers hearing test bookings to increase a record 1,220% above target, without a single pound of media investment. Finally, the nation had listened.
Okay, so I mean, I don't know if it was zero investment. I mean, to get Rick Astley alone to record it, but I mean, really, because you've got specific measurements and specific outcomes in terms of sales targets, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't be creative and you cannot produce some incredible results out of that. So it shows you how you align metrics and SMART goals in terms of your communications. So what I'm going to talk about, like I said, I'm just going to quickly talk about the social media audiences, and I'm going to talk about vanity metrics as a measurement. And consumers do not look at the brand from one perspective. Consumers look at all communications and they determine how they view a particular brand or product. So what's important is, I know often in businesses we have these particular silos: the PR department, the advertising guys, the social media people, and sometimes we don't talk to each other. But it's really important that we look across all the different types of media, whether it's paid, owned, earned, or shared, and ensure that there's alignment across all of that. Otherwise, you start getting a little bit of miscommunication, and I'll show some of the examples a bit later. But really, just to talk about some of the social media, because within social media, specifically the platforms, it's very difficult to really understand what are the metrics around audience on each of the platforms, whether it's X, whether it's Facebook, etc. So it's important to try and understand from a South African perspective, where are those audiences and what's happening with each of those platforms. And the reason why it's important is when we're looking at the new age with AI and digital doubles, are we increasing engagement because of digital doubles and because of the synthetic influencers and some of the bots out there, or are there real people that are engaging with us and getting those particular metrics? And so I think that was an important theme that we needed to look at and look at the digital doubles within that particular space. But also what we wanted to do is see actually some of these synthetic influencers have got huge audiences. Lil Miguela has actually been around since 2016. So we think about AI, and we only think about AI in the last 2-3 years. But she was developed in 2016, which has got 400 TikTok follows, 3.1 Instagram follows. And a lot of the times people think about, oh, will I really follow a synthetic influencer? And yet, when you look at some of the surveys, people know that she's a synthetic influencer, and yet they still follow her. She's a singer, she's a songwriter, she's a brand influencer. And there's a couple of those across the different platforms and specifically on social media. So it becomes really, really interesting how these synthetic influencers play a role within the brand and the brand influence. It can be both positive and negative, and we need to be aware of that. But just looking again at the social media numbers and what's happening, when we interviewed brands, the respondents said that they're going to be spending a lot of their money on Facebook. But when you're looking at the users, you see Facebook users between last year and this year dropping. TikTok has increased, Instagram has increased slightly, X has kind of remained the same, and LinkedIn has increased a little bit. So from audience perspective, we need to we need to view how audiences are on these platforms, plus how we're going to be looking at advertising on those particular platforms. Just a very quick look on Facebook users. 68% of the Facebook users in Limpopo, the Limpopo population are on Facebook. 26% of Gauteng are on X. But again, and there's a lot more details within this report, but some of the biggest users of LinkedIn are actually that earn 18,000 Rand or more. But the big part of this is, let's talk about the future of measurement. And what happens is the Barcelona principles has gone into version 4. Every 5 years, they relook at the Barcelona principles. And the reason why they look at the Barcelona principles is because the industry evolves and changes. So how do we create the Barcelona principles to future-proof how we measure the results for brands? The other interesting thing around this is when we did our survey to see how many South Africans and South African companies actually understand and know what the Barcelona principles are. We found it interesting that in 2022, about 62% actually hadn't heard of the Barcelona principles, whereas last year, and we're going into our survey next month, it's only it's 49%, so it's just under 50%. So more and more people are actually looking at the Barcelona principles, but more importantly, they're not using AVEs as a standalone metrics, and I'll explain it as we go. And it becomes really important, specifically when it comes with trust within our CFOs, our CEOs, etc. Because you start by only using AVEs, you start losing some of that trust, because what does AVE ultimately mean to the C-suite? So the AMEC has created these Barcelona principles, which sets an overarching framework across what I showed earlier: shared, owned, earned, and paid media, and it aligns all those ultimately together. So, and AMEC has created these. It's a global measurement and evaluation association, trying to benchmark this across the world to make sure that everybody aligns with this particular framework. So, what are these particular principles that the Barcelona principles are all about? The first and foremost one is really setting clear and measurable objectives. And that is a prerequisite for any effective communication. So we need to understand what is the impact. You want to actually increase sales, or what does success look like for the marketing department? But then set SMART goals. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean that we need to say, I want to attract new customers and improve profitability. That's not a SMART goal. What we need to say is, how do we take that and make it a SMART goal? And that's increase customers by 20% in 6 months. Or if you want to try and create product or company awareness, increase Facebook engagement by 20% in 1 year. So we start creating smart goals to make it a lot more effective so that you can actually align it and help that trustworthiness specifically to the C-suite. Principle number 2 is defining and understanding all stakeholder audiences. Because if you're only looking at it from one perspective, it can create quite a lot of issues. And here's a prime example. Clicks. I mean, they've got so many different stakeholders. And when they're doing a shampoo advert, it might align with certain audiences, but it may not align with other audiences. And so understanding all the audiences across your demographics becomes absolutely critical. And it's the same with Dis-Chem, where the BE issue came about and Dis-Chem lost 2 billion rands in share value. Yes, it actually improved later, but that initial period. So what I'm trying to explain is understand all our audiences. And when I show you that framework, it actually helps understand all the different audiences around the different media types, etc. Principle number 3 is a comprehensive communication measurement should be applied across all the different channels. Okay, and here's an example. This particular brand actually did a competition on a particular day. And then what they did is a different department within that brand did a CSI campaign about some of the CSI donations that they had. So the one message was conflicting against the other message instead of both of them actually aligning or actually moving those messages on different days. And that's why it's really, really important that all departments coordinate their communication across the different departments, but make sure that they align in terms of what they're ultimately doing. And here's ultimately what happened. Principle number 4 is effective measurement require both qualitative and quantitative analysis. And I mean, here from a quantitative side, we actually, when we looked at it, there was a lot of conversation around a disappointment among people, specifically on social media, that their leadership was nowhere to be seen. Okay, and then when we analyzed all their communication, we actually saw very little information around their particular leadership. So how do you align that, and how do you ensure that it aligns with what some of the people are actually saying out there? Number 5, as I said earlier, invalid measures such as AVEs should not be used, and measure something that is actually can contribute to the outcomes and impact of the communication. I mean, here's a prime example. Helen Joseph, and there's a lot of conversations that were happening around Helen Joseph, but they were all negative. But the AVEs were through the roof, so it didn't align in terms of what was happening across company and business objectives. Principle number 6 is ensure that you measure and align all those across outputs, outcomes, and impact across all stakeholder audiences. And the final one is about ethics and governance and transparency with this data and methodologies. And again, if we are actually aligning it with ethics and government and governance, it builds that trust. And when I'm saying build that trust, it doesn't only build that trust across towards our audiences, but internally, so that when you're showing the results to the C-suite, they start trusting those metrics a lot more. But also, if you're not reaching those, there's learnings that happened out of that. What did we learn from those experiences, and how do we improve and make it more effective going forward? So how do we fit all those 7 principles into a particular framework? Is that initially we start off with what is the impact? What do you want to achieve? What does success look like? So if we're understanding what success looks like, we can then start setting the objectives. What are the inputs? Where's some of those research? If we've got consumer research, if we've got some research from our websites, what are those research and what are those inputs that we need to put into place? What are some of those activities that are happening, then output, outcomes, and hopefully we align all that in order to be able to be reaching the impact that we intended to do. So guys, that's my conversation. Hopefully we've got all that information. I've got some links, and I'll post those links in in the chat box, and anybody who wants more information about that kind of measurement can do it. So thank you very much.
Oresti, thank you so much. And yeah, please do pop some of those links across for us. There are lots of really important resources in those, I'm sure. So yeah, please do pop those in the chat as we go. I really, really appreciate you making some time for us today to come and just share, I suppose, the lay of the land as our panelists now enter the screen to come and share some of their insights with us today. But before we do, promise you 2 polls. Our second one is ready for you to rock and roll. So we asked you a whole bunch of questions earlier on and got some really good insights from you for the research and measurement counts. So let's get through questions number 4 to 6. And I want you guys just to engage in this, and then we'll call our panelists onto screen for their discussion today. The first is, which metric do you trust most when evaluating campaign performance? Is it reach or impressions, engagement, conversions, ROI? Question 2 of 3 in this one. Who should take the lead in setting transparent measurement standards? Media agencies, publishers, industry bodies, or advertisers or brands? And which area of measurement innovation do you believe will be most impactful in the next 3 years? We've got about 5% participation, and while you guys vote in this poll, I'm just going to welcome, because I see they're all pinned to our screen already, so let me do some introductions so they don't sit awkwardly in the corner and wonder, what are these people doing on my screen? So nice to have you all with us today. I did introduce you all at the beginning, but let's start with Hayden on my far right from Google. Thank you so much for making some time with us today, Hayden. I know you also sit on some really important councils here at the IAB, so we're excited to have you with us today to come and share some more insights from your perspective. I know a lot of people have questions around what you guys do at Google and how all of that works in this trust world. You are leading the pack when it comes to trust and trust and transparency, and are trying your guys' best to ensure that the industry does remain all of those good things. So looking forward to hearing more from you. And then second on my left to his right, you know what I mean, Luzuko Tena just started his new position at Unilever. Nice to have you with us this morning, Luzuko. Welcome to our panel. Thanks for making some time today. And Jerusha Raath from Media24. Nice to have you coming to share some of your insights in the publisher world. You obviously judge a lot of the work that is trying to set the standard and the benchmarks in our industry at the Bookmark Awards. You also sit in the councils having these really important discussions about exactly this topic. And so we're very much looking forward to your guys' insights today. So welcome to our panel. We've got about 55% of you that have voted. I don't know, the other 55%, if you've gone to go make tea or lunch, or perhaps forgot to click submit at the bottom, please do make sure that you click submit for all of your answers so we can see them. Oh, there we go. A few more added in. Some of you just forgot to press the button. And for those of you who are just like, dude, I don't want to respond to your polls right now, I'm going to end it over there. We've got at least past the halfway through of participation. Let's look at those results together quickly. And panelists, maybe this is interesting to you, but from our audience, which metric do you trust most when evaluating campaign performance? Sad to see still 21% looking at reach and impressions. Engagement sitting at 29%, the highest number on the page, but a very close second to that is conversions and sales. Very much focused on that either engagement metric or the bottom of the funnel metrics when it comes to measurement. Very interesting. Luzuko, I know there's a question coming for you on this, so looking forward to seeing some of your answers. I see you writing down notes already. Question 2 was, who should take the lead in setting transparent measurement standards? And here we have a very mixed bag, but majority is saying that it should be industry bodies, neutral bodies like the IAB. Panelists, do you think you agree? The second to that was publishers or platforms. So, Jerusha, there you go. Oops, Hayden, there you go. Let's see if you guys agree. And the last question today is, which areas of measurement innovation do you believe will be the most impactful in the next 3 years? Quite a clear majority here for 2 answers. The one is unified cross-media measurement. Agreed. Very interesting sort of metrics to try and unify. And the first is AI-driven attribution models to try and take the complexities of the data that we're receiving from multiple platforms and trying to find a way to attribute that data using AI and technology. Very, very interesting. And then obviously very few of you saying that it should be privacy compliant tracking solutions. And then also real-time business outcome dashboards. Very, very cool insights from our audience there. So we'll pass that on to Rene, and she might have some comments on that as well. So panelists, let's start our discussion today. And a reminder to our audience, if any of you have any questions to our panel today, please do pop them in the Q&A box and I'll get them asked towards at the end of the panel discussion. So let's start first and foremost. We have to start with Google. It's the most important place. I'm sure people have lots of questions on. So let's start with you, Hayden, if you wouldn't mind. The first one that I wanted to ask you, firstly, just as a fun way to begin, is what's a measurement myth that should be debunked right now on this call?
Cool, thanks Danilo, and hey to everybody that's joining. As far as measurement myths go, I think there were there's a lot that go on, and I'm going to go with the oldie but a goodie, and that's that more data is better data. I think this is one that from the days of big data we thought would go away eventually, but I guess the amount of people and clients I've worked with over a decade that can tell me the scroll depth of their landing page and the color of the button at the bottom of the screen, but can't tell me or to tell our platforms how many sales they made is staggering. So yeah. I think this idea of basically, I think this comes as a product from seeing data and measurement very much as a technical developer job, whereas it really needs to be something driven top down. What is important for our business? How do we translate that into a digital metric? And then what do we do to get that tracked? If that's the only thing we tracked, that's what's useful to the business. And I think in that top down approach, it kind of debunks this idea of just, maybe something will be useful in the past. Let's track everything.
So more is not more always. And I thought you were going to debunk the myth that I heard, which is, I've always loved this in our business. We've referred to data as trash. It's only good if you know what to do with it, and so there's just more is not necessarily always more. But then Hayden, let's turn your attention to Google's perspective on this. Obviously, so much is evolving in this digital landscape already. How is Google evolving its current measurement frameworks to build this sort of idea of trust and transparency in what is going to be a very cookieless and confusing and gray AI-driven environment where we don't know what's real and what's not?
Yeah, definitely. It is quite a weird time indeed. And I guess we're met with this juxtaposition that we always speak about. There's users using this technology that have a need to be have more privacy. They want to be more anonymous, etc. But at the same time, those same users are saying, hey, we want more personalized services. We want more personalized content, and we want people, businesses to know us. And marketers are being asked to do even more, to deliver on that. So it is quite a difficult space that I think advertisers, marketers, publishers are in. From the Google perspective, I mean, we're doing a whole bunch of things from the user side, just being a lot more, I want to say transparent, but forward with user controls that have always been there, but bringing them to the fore, telling people they have choices in what is tracked, when it's tracked, how data is used. But very much from the marketer side, we're doing, I think, three things that are worth highlighting. On the one side, we're saying to prioritize consented first-party data. So we've spoken about, collecting as much data as you can, not always being the answer, but the data you can collect that is consented is still going to be the best quality data to identify what's going on in your business versus just what our platforms have. The second thing we're looking at is just agreeing that 100% accuracy is a fallacy. There are going to be gaps in data. So we have to live in this world where you still need to work with that. So we're looking at a whole bunch of solutions to use AI to bridge those gaps and to use modeling to bridge those gaps. From our tools side, I won't go into too much detail. I know we're strapped for time, but I'm sure a lot of people have heard about things like consent mode or enhanced conversions, where we're coming with more data from our side and models to help bridge gaps. When people do opt out or when it's difficult to judge a user's journey. And I think lastly, the other thing that we're doing is when we talk about measurement frameworks, we're very much doubling down on the fact that there's different analyses that answer different kinds of questions. And while we all are looking at data in platform, our typical attribution, which is user-based and trying to connect the dots between users, it's not the only analysis. And we're really looking at a lot more non-user-based analysis techniques to build into your measurement framework. So things like experiments, marketing mix models, things where you don't have to know an individual user, track them, look at cookies, etc. And those kinds of techniques, buffering out your measurement framework. So think of it. It's a lot there, but yeah.
No, but you've given me some really good insights. I mean, obviously from the audience side, it's really wonderful. I mean, I know you guys are approaching this cookieless world as well too for this particular reason, to give people more control and more choice. But I love the comment you made about sort of marketers having to realize that you still have to do marketing. We're not the solve. We're gathering some information, but I mean, in some ways, do stuff that moves people. It doesn't necessarily mean that the marketing. I think we've gotten a little bit spoilt in our marketing efforts because you were telling us what people wanted, and then we were just serving them that thing. Now we've got to remember and kind of understand understand our audiences well enough to know what they want. This is just a platform with which we're having a conversation. And I think this is a perfect time to switch over to Jerusha, because obviously you sit in this massive publisher world, and there's so many hurdles from a publisher side as well too, in terms of what you imagine a valuable audience member to be. But what would you say are some of the biggest hurdles publishers are facing in adopting and standardizing these measurement models when everybody's pulling in different directions? And where do you see the need for the industry to support each other?
Thanks, Danilo, and thanks everyone for having me today. I'm going to say something somewhat controversial, so you can mute me if you want me to get off. And that is, I think we need to stop obsessing about this idea of hurdles and standardization. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that as a publisher, I should measure engagement or view differently to Hayden or to Luzuko. But what I am trying to say is that we need to recognize that a quality view in my world or quality engagement in my world looks very different to a quality engagement in Hayden's world, and it will look different to a quality engagement in Luzuko's world. And as soon as we start to understand what impact is in a publisher environment versus a platform environment versus a brand environment, we can start making better decisions for everybody in the room. Let me give you an example. Our journalist Kaya Koko yesterday, or this weekend, public holidays messed me up, on Saturday, won the Nat Nakasa Award for his incredible investigative journalism into city power, into the mass corruption there. And now I see everybody in this room, although I can only see the four of you, going, we are not aligning our brand with that terrible story of 28 billion rands worth of loss. It's not going to give us the measurement we want. We're not going to be able to show our client the return. But let's think about this, right? If the goal of so many of us in this room is to drive conversion, what better place than depth of journalism where our readers are going deep, deep down a page? Think of the lead gen that we can put in this story, number one. Number two, we're interested in Johannesburg. That's where people are buying things. That's my hometown, and I can tell you now that we are adding to cart in this tough economy. These active citizens are interested in their city. They're going deep. They're going to convert. I want us to think differently about what impactful measurement is in a publisher world versus in a platform world versus in a brand world. As soon as we start to realize that the impact is different and the measurement is different on our different platforms, the more value we can give to our advertisers and our partners.
I mean, I love you, and I'm upset with you for opening up this Pandora's box, because that seems like, wow, that just really exposed us to what's happening, not just in the publisher world, but also happening, I suppose, in many other facets of our digital marketing. Not all views are equal. A view on YouTube, for example, versus a view on TikTok versus a view on Facebook don't necessarily equate to the same kind of, depth of audience engagement at that point of the view. And this must be the same in the publisher world as well, too. And so therefore, it shouldn't be priced the same. It shouldn't be quantified in the same way. And understanding that is, I think, a big Pandora's box, and I will allow you to close that box shortly with some more suggestions from you, Jerusha. But let's start with quickly about how Media24 itself is demonstrating its true value. Like, how do you guys overcome that challenge in terms of this transparent world and trying to be a trusted sort of source, but you probably having to fight a really hard battle, proving to sponsors and funders and brands, etc., that the value of that view, which is different to the view that might be appearing in Hayden's world.
I'm so grateful that you acknowledged that, because the truth is it is difficult to try and communicate the value of this view. But I am so encouraged that News24 in particular remains the highest trusted news brand in the country, and that's measurable. It happens via the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism every year. So when we're saying things like trust, confidence, depth, it's so important that we have it in the context of measurement, because that is something quantifiable that I can show. And so we are very proud of that. And that is something that we're proud to show our partners, that the trust in our environment is deep and quantifiable. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. What I'm able to do in a publisher environment is to show our brand partners that when they partner with us, if they take this chance on sort of putting aside everything they think about conversion, that it's got to be top of the funnel, or you start at the top of the funnel with mass scale and you drive. Well, what about partnering with long form journalism? To answer your question on how we're trying to flip that narrative on trust and measurement in a publisher environment, I recently spoke to some colleagues from the Financial Times in London who have metrics to gauge what a quality view is. And so what they take is the average reading time of their readers multiplied by the average time on page, divided by the word count on an article, and they get a metric to show their partners, was this a quality view or was it just a view? And so in publisher environment, we're really looking at engagement as a quality view, a quality watch. Was this user interested? Did they engage? Did they go deep? Did they comment? Did it spur them to action? And I would argue that that type of quality view is more valuable than what Oresti described as vanity metric. A click, a look, and a walk away.
I love that. Yeah, that's really cool. And so it does sound like there's this heavy emphasis on like data reporting and performance reporting can't just be at a surface level, at quantity level. It also has to be at qualitative level, and to require good data scientists, even in your world, to be able to unpack with those complicated formulas you just created now on trying to quantify what the value of a view or a metric might be. And I think that's really, really insightful. Thanks. I'm glad you guys are doing some work like that to help your customers understand the value of what they're getting out of your platforms. And then Luzuko, we'll start with you. Nice to have you with us today. Welcome in your new role. We're excited to kind of pick your brand hat now. Switch to brand side, as they say. Where do you see the biggest disconnects between sort of what metrics should be trusted and measured, what metrics are currently being measured, and actually what matters for the bottom line business growth?
Thank you very much, Danilo, and the IAB team for having me.
Oh, that is. I promise you, this is not a Jerusha thing. This is a me thing now.
I think 2 days that I've been with Unilever, muted.
Oh,
And
there we
now?
go. I've unmuted you
Fantastic.
back. Your internet was so bad, you sound like a robot. We thought you were AI taking over our call, but you're back now.
It's intentional. So yeah, I think just to get straight into it and to borrow, I think even from our global CMO, who's spoken a lot in terms of what we're doing as an organization, and some of the changes with also impact measurement is that she's spoken a lot about how in the world of brand building and marketing, actually what that means is that everything is changing in terms of how people are behaving.
There we go, Luzuko. Sorry,
How
the
is it
internet
now?
really isn't great. So I wouldn't mind asking you if
Sorry.
you could just like restart your router on your side. We'll come back to you for your question in a bit. I've even had audience
Fantastic.
members just pop us a note in the chat to say that the internet is not good. They can't hear you. So we'll move on back to our questions for the panel at large, and then we'll come back to Luzuko when he's managed to get that internet signal back up and running. Shame, it always happens when you're about to answer your question and then, the internet drops then. It's never a problem before, but here we go. Let's go back to Jerusha and Hayden, just on a question related to gaps in our industry around measurement and approaches. I know, Jerusha, you said it was quite controversial, but I think in some ways relevant and right to say that we don't necessarily need to find a way to standardize everything. We just need to learn to understand different metrics mean different things, and become more, I suppose, complex in our understanding of metrics and marketing and what to measure. But in terms of both of your view on what other gaps we're experiencing in our industry, is it a methodology issue? Is it an adoption issue? Is this just about transparency and trust in the market? What do you imagine are the biggest gaps? And Jerusha, we'll start with you and then Hayden come to you from there. But yeah, what are those biggest gaps we're facing in being able to do this effectively and well?
Thanks, Danilo. I mean, I think it's very obvious that there are gaps, but I also don't think that it's complete doom and gloom because we're in the right room. So one example from a publisher environment is that our publisher committee is now working on a standardized publisher measurement dashboard that is facilitated by the IAB. That means that no matter who you are or where you're coming from, you're able to log on to this IAB dashboard and you're able to keep me to account. Because if I say that trust is my unique selling point, then you need to be able to trust what I'm telling you when I'm telling you how many people are accessing my site, how many people are converting, and how long they're on there. But that also means that every publisher in the industry needs to be held to that same standard. So again, we need to have the standards in place and understand the nuance behind the performance of each of those publisher platforms. And at the risk of sounding like an altar call for the IAB, the reality is that we all need to be a part of this industry body we all need to agree that it's important for us to be measured against the same standard. And that involves, and this is a call to my publishers in the room, it involves us all being involved here and deciding what that is, because it's good for you individually as the publisher, but it's also good for the industry. There are gaps, but I think we have the answers to that.
Okay, so it's about collaboration, sharing knowledge and ideas, and coming together as bodies is one of the biggest gaps we can see, is not enough people coming together, everyone trying to solve it in their individual worlds. And Hayden, are you seeing this on your world as well too? What are some of the biggest gaps you're seeing in being able to deliver effective measurement, standardized models, etc., when it comes to attribution?
Well, there's so many perspectives to speak of from here, but I just want to piggyback on Jerusha. Like, I think this standardization is really important from a benchmarking perspective. But from our first comments earlier around this idea of every business really starting top down and understanding what they need to judge their business, I think it also aligns with Jerusha's point. Like, everybody has to look at their businesses and see how to measure it. I'm actually really impressed by what News 24 has done, because they understand exactly what they need to prove that their business is working, and they've discussed that and made metrics that reflect that. And if more businesses sat and had that conversation, how do we say, what is our business doing? I think that is what helps us through measurement. The one other thing, sorry, I'm going to get a 2 for 1, but I'll be quick, is I think there's also a really big perception gap between, the implementers, people working in marketing and management and C-levels, that data and measurement, all that kind of stuff is this huge cost center versus a revenue driver or an investment. And that's the conversation I'm having on an almost daily basis in my role at Google. And this idea, it's crazy to me that this idea is lost, that even having the tiniest amount of data and bettering your audiences and setting up an exclusionary audience so you're not wasting spend, then on top of that taking that spend and using it for better audiences, that's a real business saving. Or with retail media taking over at the moment, being able to actually monetize your data and make it a revenue center. Like, this is the reality of data measurement, metrics, all that kind of stuff, and it's still seen very much as this tech cost of developers. I think that's something that needs to change.
Yeah, I think even more so, you mentioned something that I was surprised that you went on the other route, but I would say, yeah, absolutely. Like, the knowledge gaps between the different divisions and who looks at this data also seems to be a real challenge in the industry. What does my CEO understand about data and performance and marketing, but versus what does the marketer understand, versus what does their agency understand, versus what does the publisher that they've published understand? Everybody understands something different in that mix, and the right people not having the conversations with the right people and causing maybe a bit of confusion about what value actually is. Luzuko, let's test whether your AI has fixed its algorithm and can now chat to us. Do you want to take a stab at the initial sort of thought about the biggest disconnect in what we're measuring, what we should be measuring, and what really businesses should measure for their business performance?
Fantastic. I think if I have any issues, I'll switch off my camera, because that might help a lot. And is everything fine now?
So far, yeah, sounds good.
Perfect.
You're more
This
human
is
than
how you
before.
know that I live in Johannesburg, actually, with the wonky Wi-Fi. But anyway,
I know an article on News 24 that you can read about city power, but anyway, we'll get there.
So yeah, I think essentially, as an industry, what we're doing is that we're still evaluating and measuring effectiveness on kind of what's easiest to count, the impressions, the vanity metrics, as we mentioned earlier. And I think what we're missing by doing that is that we're missing the area in where growth is happening, and that's really and those areas are the hardest to measure. Things like trust, as well as cultural relevance. And I think that kind of brings me in terms of what matters, and at least what matters to us as an organization, as Unilever. We're on a big drive in terms of transforming how we look at marketing and looking at marketing as really a place to drive desire at scale. And for us, in looking at that, there's 3 key metrics in which we've kind of outlined as mattering the most for us. The first ones are around sort of brand lift and trust scores, because ultimately these kind of tell us as brands how credible we are to the consumer and how they feel about us. The second one is incremental reach. And I think what that really shows us as an organization is that we're growing penetration over and above and beyond the already converted. I think the regular sort of reach metric doesn't really tell that clear story, at least for us as an organization. And the third one is around community driven engagement, where people are kind of sharing stuff. Like, let's look at social media, where people are sharing posts, they're commenting on them. And I think for us, this is a clear indication and proof really that our ads, our content, and everything we put out there isn't just being seen, but also people are intentionally choosing it and sharing it as well. So I think for me, linking it back again to kind of measurement that really drives desired scale and shows that. I think it's really important for us to really kind of pick out the metrics that aren't just convenient for reporting, but ultimately what's important for growth. And I think some of the three that I've mentioned are those that matter to us.
I don't know if you heard earlier on when you were having internet troubles, but that's exactly what I think Hayden is going to be applauding you for anyway. It's just like each company in its own right needs to understand its own metrics. What does it want to measure? What is valuable to it as an organization? And then you're extracting things from publishers, you're extracting from platforms to understand, okay, now how do I take the information from where I'm publishing and relate that to my world? And so you guys have already made a huge step, I suppose, in the right direction of understanding what is important to you to measure. And I think that's great. I know I promised that the Q&A would come after our panel, but there is a question in the Q&A that I'm going to answer live now because I do believe it's something that could contribute to this discussion. And it's to you, Hayden, and it's about these gaps that we now have, I suppose, in brand, in marketing agencies, between sort of, you know, what we used to be able to measure, what we won't be able to measure anymore, and understanding how to attribute those things. Is the view from yourself, maybe as an individual, or if you want to represent Google in the answer, you're welcome to, but is the answer A/B testing? Still, is that the thing that's going to try and fill some of those gaps, like test different things to see what kind of results are going to move the needle? Or is AI going to be the thing we should be waiting to learn to understand a bit more of, is connecting very complex dots together that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise manually? What's your view?
Sure, no, happy to take this one. And first and foremost, let me say I'm going to give you the abridged version. I think if anybody wants, we did a Accelerate Media Effectiveness event earlier this year, and you can watch the 2-hour-long version. But I guess the answer is kind of a non-answer. It's the fact that there's no silver bullet. I know I mentioned earlier we talk about our modern measurement framework at Google, which is 3 pillars, which basically include attribution, experiments, and MMMs. Experiments including A/B testing. And what we drive home there is painting a more holistic picture by complementary analyses and answering different kinds of questions for different stakeholders. So if I deep dive really quick into each of those, attribution is still going to be valid, and AI is going to help and buffer that out and fortify that data, even if there are gaps. But that attribution, so in-platform analysis, is going to always be your day-to-day decision-making tool. Even if it's not as accurate as your CRM, every single sale, every single dollar or rand that came into the business, it's going to give you enough directional information to make important decisions and strategic decisions as you're working on platforms. Where A/B testing and experiments come in is when you want to really dive into the role of one individual strategy or channel in your mix of channels. This is where actually the stakeholder is usually less the person running campaigns or doing ad ops, but maybe a CMO would like to know, hey, why is YouTube in this mix? Or why are we using Meta? And then you can experiment and find out the incremental impact that one strategy or channel brings in. And again, there are models or experiment designs that don't require user level data. And MMMs, lastly, are going to fill that gap more on the strategic CMO, CFO level discussion of, when you look at everything you did over the last 2 years, how does the business respond from the marketing we did in the long-term impact? What happens if we had to look at things differently, or use that model to predict what would happen if we changed the mix? So I don't think it's A/B testing is the one thing. It 100% belongs in a mix of complementary analyses.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you so much. I mean, it is complex. Even I'm scratching my head slightly, but thank goodness I'm not a publisher in that world. But I do understand this idea of being able to spit out those data sort of measurements that you're speaking at different levels within a company. Not everything needs to be measured the same way and communicated the same way across the organization to the CMO and CFO. The conversation is very different to what is happening on the ground for this individual campaign right now for those metrics. And I think being able to mature out your data knowledge, I suppose, in companies is the first step. And I would like to just maybe, because we only got 5 minutes before the webinar actually closes, and I do need to get Rene onto screen to share some insights. I'm going to go around the room and just ask Jerusha to start with you. In your view, from the experience you've seen so far, the brands you've interacted with who buy media on the platform, to the boardrooms you've been in to prove accuracy, to the CMO and CFO conversations you've been having, what is the one main sort of thing you wish we should do in the next 12 months in this industry right now to try and move us closer towards what we're saying now is trust being measured, being able to elevate this transparency and metrics that matter?
I guess the way that I would sum it up is to be mission-minded, to have a mission-minded measurement strategy. That's a mouthful, but to really understand what is the thing that's going to drive value for you, and does it look different in different environments? It sure as heck's going to look different in Hayden's environment to my environment, but the magic is going to be when you realize that and you're working out your digital strategy and your measurements for Hayden's portion of the campaign look the most effective in a Google or platform environment. Your publisher section of this looks to be impactful in a publisher environment. And then when you're driving people back to brand, into brands platforms, it's the conversion that you want there. But the mission needs to be using our full ecosystem to the full effect, and it's going to look different wherever you are in this ecosystem.
Okay, I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief then. So we're not all just stupid and don't understand how to like mix all of these crazy data points together. It is different. It is different in different environments. You've got to think differently when viewing reports in different worlds, and how you choose to interpret that internally is really something that you need to mature out. Phew, okay, I don't feel so silly. Hayden, from you, what do you imagine is the one thing you're hoping the industry does in the next 12 months from this webinar? What is the one actionable thing we can do to elevate transparency and to get closer towards metrics that actually matter for our businesses?
To be honest, my one sounds very simple, but actually isn't. And it's just, I encourage dialogue and just having these discussions. At the end of the day, the amount of companies that say that they want to be data-driven organizations that's driven by culture, you know, is everyone. But the amount of people I speak to on a day-to-day basis that just hope that somebody else gives them a dashboard one day and then they can make decisions, you know, that's the view. So I think people actively participating on all levels in these conversations is something that's really, really needed.
Okay, so active participation, engagement, and then maybe Luzuko, you're going to tell us to educate ourselves. What is your main view of the one thing we can do in the next while to understand how to elevate transparency in the metrics that matter in our world?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with Hayden in terms of, I think, more dialogue and more intentional dialogue. I think we spend a lot of our time sitting in rooms talking and no action comes from that. And I think it's because there is no intention. So just to add to that, I think it's really about adding intention to that. And Jerusha, I think, summed it up really well in terms of having that mission mindset as well, because that's a recipe for success.
And because I'm an MC and not a technical specialist, I'll say from my side, I think one of the things is to be braver as an individual to say, we don't know, we don't get it. In our industry, there's a lot of technical jargon running around, a lot of pressure to compete with each other, not only with sort of, you know, the market that's out there, highly competitive industries. We're expected to know and to understand. And often the stuff is very gray. It is confusing. It is hard to attribute. There is no one way. We're not silly. It is important that we try and share knowledge together to understand. And I think start there, recognize that this is more complex than necessarily your brands might be making it out to sound. Don't compete with each other, support each other to try and understand this complex nature of the world. And Jerusha, thank you so much for your initial note, because it's a perfect segue to Rene about like how we need to collaborate together as an industry to try and help with this problem that the industry is facing across the board. And a big thank you to Hayden and Luzuko as well too for your expertise. You all three are very, very busy people in our industry, all very smart people in our industry, contributing a lot of your time and expertise. And I really appreciate you giving some of that up today. And so, Rene, you have got some insights that you want to share with our audience today about how they can contribute towards a research paper that you're busy putting together as part of the IAB Research and Measurement Council, and to thank our people for today. So go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much to our panelists and to Oresti and Danilo. Thank you so much to you as well. Just from my side, please look out for the next newsletter. There is a survey coming, and we do encourage you all to participate. And then just lastly from my side, should trust be the new currency in digital marketing? Because I think at the end of the day, trust must be our constant, and it must become our most valuable currency. Just to end off on that.
Rene, that's beautiful. Thank you. So trust being the thing that we need to start building as an industry. And that research paper you're putting together is based on, what are you guys trying to understand from the industry? What kind of data you're hoping to get out of the market?
So just the uneasy feelings about trust, measurement, what measurement and metrics matter, and then just also going into that world as to every metric does lose its meaning if trust isn't there. So just getting the understanding of the collective industry, agencies, publishers, platforms, brands, not just the easy to count metrics, but the ones that encourage business growth, and most important, audience trust.
Yes, I love that. Cool, Rene. Thank you so much. We look forward to participating in it. We'll look forward to seeing the IAB emails that come out with that as well too. So Rene, thank you very much for launching that as part of our Research and Measurement Council. And a big thank you again, as you've noticed, to all of our speakers. Oresti, thank you so much for your time today for our keynote. Jerusha, Hayden, and Luzuko, as well as Rene, who came to wrap things up for us today as part of our Insight series. And to our audience who've joined us today, we're so grateful to have you with us. Thank you for your time and your attention and your energy. That was part of our Insight series today. We look forward to seeing you next month. Our Media Council is going to be sharing some insights with us in October. Until I see you then, have a fabulous rest of your September and welcome to spring. And we look forward to seeing you at our next Insight series. From Danilo, Ornico, the Special Effects Media and IAB teams, have a lovely afternoon.